Welcome to the Ashley McDougall podcast, where we'll explore the many journeys of women in business, the challenges of making it all work, how growing a successful team of women can open up the grit and tenacity it takes to overcome today's balance of life and work and become the best version of yourself. Join our open and honest discussion about being a mother, leader, wife, and a successful realtor in today's crazy market. Now here's your host, Ashley McDougall.
Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited about today. And most importantly, I am introducing you guys to my most favorite person in the entire world. I have known this guy since I was 15 years old, and he became my boyfriend quickly. And then easily became my husband not long after that. Now we call him my baby daddy. And he happens to still be my husband. So I brought my husband on. He is the very first guest of our podcast because I think there's a lot to be said for the spouse and the partner of an entrepreneur. It's really a family affair. When you have someone who is in sales or entrepreneurship, it really does take the whole family. So I thought it would be great for you to hear from Jason, my husband, Jason McDougall, and just the history of when I started real estate and the things that our family went through, and really just bringing it down to the tactical piece of what are some of the things that we have put in our life that maybe it's different than everybody else's, but it works and it helps us to stay intentional about our time. So thanks, babe, for being on my show.
Well, I'm super excited. Pumped about it. I'm ready. Okay. Ready to go.
Thank you. So I'm curious to talk to you about when I first started in real estate and when we first got really busy. Share with me some of the feelings that you had around me being busy and just how that felt for you.
Well, there's a lot of mixed emotions in there, right? First of all, you're excited, right? You're like, man, business is doing good. You're staying busy. You got your pipelines full. That's awesome. But then there's the other aspect of, from the spouse's perspective, so to speak, is that, you're like, well, is there time for me? You get to be where you're so busy where you start losing touch a little bit about maybe what's really important. What weighs heavy in your life? Is it more from the business aspect, or is it more of your marriage or your, the synergy that you have with your spouse or your partner, whoever that may be? So for me anyways, there was a time where, I felt like, as the spouse of an entrepreneur who was extremely busy right out the gate, where it was like, well, where do I fit in, right? Where do I fit into the schedule? Where do I fit into to your life and your career? The one thing that I always wanted to make sure of is I never wanted to stifle or put out the flame that you had internally, right? And how you were excited, you were driven. You're like, man, I'm just so pumped up. I'm ready to get, charge hell with a water pistol, so to speak,
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so it was tough in the beginning there, As time went on, there were ways that we were able to, and I know this sounds crazy. I've actually gotten to some funny conversations with people at my work about it. As it's almost like you do have to set proper boundaries, and you do have to set times where it's like, listen, this is my time. Okay. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, you can be whoever you need to be to whoever that individual is, whether that's your client, whether that's a colleague of yours, or whatever the case may be. But this time that we've set out, this is going to be our time.
Yeah.
One of the good tricks that I felt like really worked for us, and maybe it works for other people too, I don't know. Sometimes in the evening time, especially, in that phase of life, we had two young boys. I'm going to say our oldest, I think, was like, I don't know, 11 or 12 ish, something right around there when you first got into real estate. And our youngest was, 7 years old, 7 or 8, so, and trying to juggle, business and then trying to juggle, okay, well, how do you maintain that strong love connection, so to speak, right, with your spouse, all on top of, well, how do I raise my kids and my family? And what
Right.
does that, you know? So it was very difficult for us to find time in the evenings, go out on dates, so to speak, things of that nature. And so what really worked great and I loved and enjoyed was that we would do lunch dates, because
Yeah.
my job, my position is pretty flexible at my work. And we were able to say, hey, look, you know what? Let's carve an hour out of the
Hmm.
day, 2 or 3 times a week, and really bond and get that connection together, right? Spend time together talking about things that you've been wanting to talk about. Um, yeah, and so that was, to me, I think that was a huge advantage to us. And maybe I hope one day that could help other people as well. I don't know.
Yeah. I remember at one point, early in my career, you had said to me, if you would stop dating real estate, you could be married to me. And you
Yeah,
probably don't remember saying that, but I just remember, and that's always resonated with me. I never wanted you to think I was dating my business so that it was hindering our marriage. I do know, going back to the two boys, not only were we worried about raising them, but we also wanted them to have opportunities. So you and I both grew up in an area that we played sports, but we really didn't have the family unit and the support unit that most people do have. So it was important for us to never miss a soccer game or a wrestling match or even
sure.
anything. So you couple that with, you have a real estate business, you have an intense job, that you're running, and then we also have all these, things that have to happen to be what we thought was the best parents around town. So,
Right.
and it does get overwhelming. Um, and I think when you said, going and doing the lunch dates, that was so important to me because it gave me something to look forward to during the day. It gave
Yeah.
me something to look forward to, during the week. But most important, I knew we were going to connect and talk about things that, maybe we couldn't talk about when the kids were around or
Right.
whatever the case may be. So,
Yeah. And I would be lying to you if I was going to sit here and say that those times were easy, right? Because there wasn't. There was some very difficult times where, I, again, as a spouse of an entrepreneur who's extremely busy, you're like, man, just like I said, like, where do I fit in? You know what I mean? It felt like there was times where it's like, okay, well, in order for us to spend time together, I need to put myself on your schedule, right? I need to
mhm,
send you a calendar invite and you need to block that time out, so to speak. And it is tough. It is difficult,
mhm,
and it takes the certain type of individual. Personally, I'm not the type of guy. I call them golden retrievers, right? I don't need to be petted, and I don't need to be flushed
good
with
thing you don't have
compliments.
any hair.
I know, right? And flushed with confidence and compliments and things like that. So I was okay with, I don't want to say taking a back seat, but I was okay with just being supportive.
Yeah.
I wanted to be supportive. I wanted to see you flourish, right? But at the same time, there was a set of principles that we wanted to live by, that we wanted to raise our kids by, and I felt like that was extremely important.
Yeah.
That's something that personally I just wasn't willing to sacrifice, and I felt like we did a pretty good job of juggling that.
Yeah.
When the sports games were practices were there, or sports games were there, and we were going different directions, sometimes with one kid, one with the other,
Yeah.
you know and there's sacrifices that are made during those moments. But never once was I angry or frustrated. I remember there was one time, uh you know I think I had gotten to that spot where I was getting very upset, and I was like, man, I said, and I distinctively remember saying this to you. I said, you know what? If I was your client, you would have been on time, or you wouldn't have pushed me to the side.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
so
And
good. Yeah.
because that's how I felt, right? Because it was
Yeah.
like, with your thought process and your mentality is like, hey, my client, if I got a meeting at 3, I'm going to be there 10 minutes early. I'm going to be prepared. I'm going to be ready to go. And
Yeah.
then if it was our time to spend together and say, whether we had a dinner date and you were like, okay, hold on. Let me finish this real quick. Well, hold on, to give me 25 more minutes. And I was like, if I was your client, you would not treat me this way.
Yeah. That's good.
And,
That's good.
and that was a little bit how I felt, during that moment.
Yeah.
And but yeah, listen, it's not easy. Not everybody can do it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that has helped us the most through this is that just our deep rooted, the love that we have for each other, right? But our friendship,
Yeah.
and really what that stood for. Um, I have always been your biggest cheerleader. That's for certain.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I was always, I bring a little bit of sound of reason sometimes to some of the things some of the ideas that you would come up with. But
Okay.
there was a
Fair.
lot of times where I was like, hey, that's crazy, but let's do it. Like, I'm
Yeah.
game. Come on. Like, what's the worst
Yeah.
that could happen? What could
Right.
happen? I don't care. We came from nothing. It wasn't like, we came from rich families that had all this stuff. And it's like, we worked for everything that we had. So what's the worst that could happen? We could go to
Right.
living in a small, single wide trailer or something. I don't, I'm okay with that. As long as we have each other and the kids are healthy and everything else, let's do it. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and I appreciate that openness and just, not having that pressure of having to withhold a certain lifestyle and that kind of thing. But I'm curious because we've only talked about me being an entrepreneur and how it was to be a spouse or a partner of an entrepreneur. But you also have a job. You also run a construction company. You also have your own things. So let's talk a little bit about how we create space in the evening or times together where we can kind of, for lack of better words, vomit our day on each other and then leave it at the door.
Yeah.
Because you have things too. Like you have a job, and your job isn't always the best and easiest either.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true. That's very true. So I, I am I'm vice president of construction for JRC Mechanical. So we're one of the largest mechanical contractors in the area. Commercial HVAC, plumbing, sheet metal, ductwork controls, all of that stuff. Pretty large company. We've got 3 offices, a little over 300 employees, and it as as you were building your career, right, as an entrepreneur, and you were out conquering the world of real estate, right, and what that looks like for you, and how preparing your talents and things. When I was 19, I started out as a laborer. I went to work for a local construction company here because we started young having kids, and it was like, man, you came over, you're like, hey, I got to tell you something. I think I'm pregnant. I was like, oh my gosh, man, like, we don't have any insurance. What am I going to do? Oh my
I was
God.
in college.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so crazy. It was such a
Yeah.
crazy time in life. Right. And so, that's where I started out, and started as a laborer, and went through an apprenticeship program, and worked my way up to a lead mechanic, and then a foreman and a superintendent. And then I was in charge of a small division, then moved into the office eventually as a project manager, and just never stopped. And you
Yeah.
were supportive the entire way, right? When we get home, one of the things that we would talk about is, how our day happened, right? Like, what happened? What was crazy? Spill the tea, so to speak, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was nice to be able to have a sounding board, right? Get something off of my chest. God, babe, what do I do in this situation? Like, I'm in a tough spot. I'm really struggling with how to make this decision. What do you think would be best, right? Because you brought a different perspective,
Way
being
different.
yeah, way different
Way
sometimes,
different.
being outside of the situation that I wasn't thinking of or didn't bring to the table. And, with what we do now, and, some of the speaking that I do at different career centers and technical schools, and the apprenticeship programs that I run and lead, and the field support staff, you have helped me tremendously on, you know, riding that line. I never wanted to be, I never wanted to be overbearing, right? I wanted to have sympathy, but at the same time, like, there's a line that has to be drawn, right? And you can only take but tolerate but so much. And you really help me with that perspective sometimes. We come home in the evening, and then, start hanging out with the kids or doing something, and we're cooking, getting ready for the evening time. And all through that process, we're talking about our day. Oh yeah, what happened with that deal you had? Blah, blah, blah. And you start talking, and I was like, oh, that's crazy. In that contract, you need to do this, this, and this, and we should write this down and talk about that. And then you would look at me and say the same thing. You're like, so what happened? Oh no, you need to tell this guy, you know, he should this, that, or with those ladies in the office, you should probably handle it a little bit differently, Jason. You got to understand they're women, okay? They're not construction guys. And it's like, I know, but I have a hard time with that. So it's been nice. It's been really nice. I enjoy, and as you know, we have a lot of friend couples, right, who work in the same industry. And we contemplated it for a while, right? We're like, man, if we got together, we're so good as a team, we could conquer the world and stuff. And it's like, am I willing to sacrifice what our marriage is potentially? Are we two very strong-willed individuals, which I think we are? I don't know how good that's going to go for us. So
Yeah.
I enjoy having my thing, right, in my career, and I enjoy you having yours. But I love being a part of that, and I
Yeah.
love helping, and being your support, your cheerleader, and just being behind you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. So what I hear you saying, and what I think is the most important key for any of the listeners to hear, is being intentional with the time that you have with your spouse. It's so easy to overlook because they live there, they're sleeping in the bed next to you, your partner, is always there, but you don't realize that sometimes when you are on your phone, sitting next to them is just like not being there.
Yeah,
So I think one of the things that we've put in play and really have been intentional about is just putting our cell phones away. um, and both of our careers, we always laughingly say, no offense to anyone who is a doctor, but no one is dying on our table.
well,
So we have the ability to set proper boundaries to create a life that is of abundance, and that we don't feel like we're missing out and we're only one dimensional. And that's something I think is really important. I know early in my career, one of the things that I know I really missed the most and I gave up tremendously was my friends, my girlfriends. I
yeah,
was busy all the time working. And if I wasn't working, I was on a wrestling mat, or I was at a soccer game, or I was at, date night with you, which all was important. But equally important is to have the tribe of friends, to be able to have a sounding board, have someone
yeah.
that that you can say the hard things to, or talk bad about you. No, just joking, just joking. I would never
Yeah.
do that.
Hey, full disclosure, you're not a wrestler, right? So don't want anybody thinking, hey,
Oh,
that
no,
Ashley's out there on the wrestling mat like WWF style or something.
no, our son wrestles. Sorry, that probably came off wrong.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a wrestler, although I would love to box, and I think my
Yeah,
time is
okay.
done with that. But anyway, so tell me a little bit, Jason, about how you feel. I know that's something you've really been intentional about, is creating a tribe of guys that you can go and have dinner with. And these people
Yeah.
don't have to be your same age. They don't have to be in the same field as you. And honestly, would you agree that it's kind of nice when they're not?
Yeah, it really is. you just want to get away with somebody and not talk shop, right?
Yeah.
You just don't, you just want to talk about, what happened in the game last night, or, the guy over here is working on his house, or oh yeah, he's getting ready to buy a new truck. Oh, cool. What's going on with that? One of the things that I'm very purposeful and being very intentional, right, on spending time with certain people and individuals and people that I feel like add value.
Mm-hmm.
People, they may not be like role models or anything, right? But they're people that you feel add value to your life.
Mm-hmm.
And, so for instance, we've got a couple of all of our neighbors they're great people, right? And one group of neighbors that we have, once I set it up once a month, I was like, man, we need to set up a guy's dinner. It's gonna be this date. We're gonna go hang out. We're gonna spend an hour and a half, 2 hours together, whatever. Drink a couple beers.
And guys doing guy shit.
Just doing dude shit. You know what I mean? Whatever
right.
guys do, chicken wings and watching a ball game or the UFC fight, whatever it is.
Right.
And having that time, because it's so important. Sometimes you just get wrapped around the axle of, I gotta grind nonstop, and it's like, how do you find that boundary? You have to be intentional sometimes, because, for me anyways, it's my calendar. I live off my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
If I put it on the calendar, it's gospel. Like that's the gospel. No matter what, that's what it's going to be. And if I get it on there, that's what I'm going to do. It's going to be set. And that allows me to draw that line of delineation and say, okay, it's time to cut work off. It's time to cut family off. Now I need to spend some time for Jason. I need to work on Jason and what Jason enjoys, right? Because that's important. Because when you're constantly giving, and when you're constantly, sometimes in a relationship or a marriage like what we have with our businesses or our careers, you're so constantly focused on, giving to your other one, right? So you're pouring out. Well, sometimes, man, you just want to talk. You want to sit back, and you just don't want to be engulfed, like I said, and just talking shop or work sometimes. So you got to be very careful and very intentional. And what you were talking about with the cell phones, like that is so important. I can't remember how many times I think I've told you in the past, like, listen,
I know I'm about to get in trouble right here.
all the banks are closed. There's no loan officers out there. Like nothing is going to happen between now and tomorrow morning at 9:00. Put the phone away.
Oh, but there may be.
Yeah, that's
that
right.
$1 million buyer might be calling.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, at 8:30 at night that might not be the $1 million buyer you want.
Right.
So it's very, you have to be very intentional.
I agree.
Otherwise, you get engulfed, and then it's hard out.
Yeah, I agree. And I know you've got to get back to work and everything, but I want to ask one more question, and I want to change gears on you just a little bit. There are many, many things that you inspire me about. I could go on a list for a very long list, but one of the things that you inspire me the most, and I think there are many people who would say the same, is your heart for the apprenticeship school that you help bring in and you help run. Can you share a little bit about your passion behind that and why you feel so passionate about it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said, I do a lot of traveling around here, traveling locally, right? That's what I mean, not like cross country or states. And speak at a lot of trade schools, high schools, and I tell people all the time, I'm not anti-college. I'm just pro-trade, right? Yeah, our oldest son, he's in college right now. I have loved him to learn a trade to come to work in the industry. Absolutely. I mean, I have HVAC techs and plumbers that make over 100 grand a year that work for me with no college education, no anything. Yeah, that's right. And I want people to know that you can have a good career, right? That you can have a good life, provide your family. You provide for your kids, and you can have a stable income and not go to school or go to college. Like I said, I'm not anti-college. It's just not for everybody. Not everybody's meant to be, an accountant or a computer engineer or mechanical engineer or things of that nature. And the kids nowadays are constant, counselors and guidance counselors are constantly pushing all the time. Well, you need to get a degree. You got to get a degree. Is it beneficial to you in your life? Absolutely. Like I would never discourage anyone from going to college if that's what you want to do in your heart, right? But some kids just go because that's what their parents want them to do, or because that's what their grandparents told them they needed to do. And I want them to know that, hey, there's another way out there, And so what type of advantages do the apprenticeship programs carry for you? Number one, that experience alone in itself, that certificate, when you graduate that 4-year program, that's something that nobody could ever take from you, right?
Yeah.
That can't be watered down. That can't be taken. And there's a level of income, right? I'll say reciprocity, so to speak, as, I could move to Spokane, Washington, and being that I'm a master electrician in the state of Virginia, and I'd finished a 4-year apprenticeship program, guess what? I don't care what happens. I'm going to make this certain level of income, period.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's just, it's helpful for people. And it isn't just men either. It's
that's good.
we're real big on diversity and inclusion. The industry and construction in itself it's evolving rapidly. It's one of the areas, and here's what I tell people all the time. Hey, guess what, guys? Your jobs can't be outsourced. Okay.
That's true.
I can do my accounting from a different firm in India or in some other country in Turkey or whatever the case may be, right? Or my engineering firm, or if I'm a modeler, or whatever the case may be. But in construction, that can't be outsourced. And there's a required amount of people there, right? Listen, we're having babies. Populations are growing. Construction is needed. It's a huge market where we're severely understaffed. So I just have a heart. I have a heart for it. I went through it. I know what it did for me. I know what it's done for our family.
Right.
And, I tell people all the time, all I can do is provide an opportunity.
That's right. Yeah.
Whatever you do with that opportunity, that's you. That's your choice to make. You can make something great of it, or you can squander it away. And that's totally your decision. So
yeah. One of my favorite times of the year is the time where you guys have the signing day and you get to go to the apprentice or the career centers, and these kids, instead of signing like you would on a sports team to go to a college, they sign with a company. And it's so cool because you're like glowing when you come back, because their life stories, and a lot of those kids just kind of came from the same background as we did. So it's just really great. So I really think that, and I hope the listeners have enjoyed hearing a little bit about the McDougals and how we tick. There's so much more.
We're scratching the surface here.
Barely. But I guess the whole idea and the heart behind this episode was just to share that even though there are entrepreneurs out there that look like they have it all together, there was a time they didn't have it together. And quite frankly, they probably still don't. So, it takes a village. In my case, it takes Jason to be behind me. But certainly find your village, find your tribe. And thank you so much, babe, for being on our show.
It also helps that we're so daggone stubborn.
It's true. You didn't have to tell them that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I'm thankful. I just can't wait to see what this thing does. I'm totally blessed and super excited. Super excited.
Awesome. Well, you know what? You know me. I go big or go home.
That's right.
Love you. Bye.
Thank you for joining the Ashley McDougall podcast. We hope you've enjoyed our candid discussions and honest appraisals of being a mother, a leader, a wife, and a friend in today's crazy challenges. But remember to take a moment for yourself to relax and enjoy all the wisdom you bring to life. And also please subscribe so you can look forward to some great stories and downright real stuff. But in the meantime, go to sell757.com to learn more. We look forward to seeing you next time.